Hey everyone, welcome back to our APIGURU channel. For those of you who are new here, I'm Damien Thornhill. On this channel we share everything you need to know about APIs. Today we will explore API versioning and share best practices for implementing it. Let's get started. Versioning your APIs is essential for maintaining support for existing consumers while making significant updates to your APIs. Each API version acts as a formal contract with your users, who have integrated your API into their systems in ways that are typically complex and not easily alterable once deployed. By providing explicit versioning, you ensure that your current agreement with users remains intact, guaranteeing that changes will not disrupt their applications or workflows. There are several approaches to implementing API versioning, each with its advantages and trade-offs. Include the version in the URL is a common practice and simplifies caching since the URL changes with each version, making it easy for clients to cache resources. However, this approach requires branching the entire API for each breaking change. Adding the version as a query parameter is straightforward and allows clients to default to the latest version. However, it can complicate routing requests to the appropriate API version and may not be as clean or intuitive as having the version in the URL. Including the version number in the HTTP header keeps the URL clean and avoids clutter. However, it requires clients to send custom headers which might not be as user-friendly for testing and exploration. Versioning through content negotiation. This method allows clients to specify the version they want through content negotiation, offering granular control over versioning by versioning individual resource representations rather than the entire API. While flexible, it can be complex to implement and test and may pose challenges for API exploration using standard browsers. Regardless of the method chosen, it is crucial to start versioning from the outset, even in the initial stages of your API. Consistent and deliberate versioning practices are essential for managing changes effectively and maintaining API stability. URI versioning is often the most straightforward and most intuitive approach, making it a good starting point for many APIs. You increment to a new version of your API when you introduce a breaking change. Don't increment to a new version of your API for backwards compatible changes or fixes. Otherwise, you will quickly end up with many APIs you need to continue supporting per your deprecation policies. You only want to force consumers to switch to a new version when they must explicitly know there is a breaking change. Unlike traditional semantic versioning, APIs should not expose minor or patch version numbers. From a user's perspective, major versions are updated in place and users receive new functionality without migration. This is an example of an OpenAPI definition with the API version in the URL. The API version is distinct from the version of the OpenAPI specification and the OpenAPI definition. It refers to the version of the implemented API. To minimize the need for creating new versions with every minor change, consider the following guidelines. Avoid mandating specific schemas for data input or promising fixed schemas for output. This flexibility can help reduce frequent version changes. Document that property names are part of the API contract, but their values are not. Refrain from removing existing properties from the payload. While adding new properties is acceptable, ensure that your consumers' applications are designed to ignore any properties they do not use. Ensure any new properties or query parameters are optional, preserving backward compatibility with existing implementations. When modifying cardinality, changes should shift from mandatory to optional rather than the reverse. API versioning is only effective if your consumers know and understand the changes. Clear communication is critical to ensuring a smooth transition between versions. While it's essential to evolve your API, it's equally important to respect the needs of your consumers. Deprecating an API version should be done cautiously, with ample notice and support for those affected. Set a clear deprecation policy that defines how long older versions will be supported. Provide a deprecation timeline including critical dates such as when support will be reduced and when the version will be fully retired. Offer support during the transition period, such as tools or documentation that assist consumers in upgrading to newer versions. The general recommendation is to have no more than 2 live versions of your API available at any one time and to have a transition period of up to 6 months before the complete deprecation of the old API version. Every API release should include a version number for clear identification. To simplify management, it's best to focus on major versioning only and avoid using minor or patch versions. Clients should be given at least one full cycle to adapt before any version is deprecated. When creating a new version, deploy all API endpoints simultaneously to prevent confusion from mismatched versions. For deprecated APIs, return a consistent 410 gone error for calls, applying this response uniformly across all old versions. Additionally, ensure that your versioning strategy aligns with your branching strategy for smoother development. It's essential to avoid tightly coupling API versions with your application or backend service versions, as changes in backend logic should not impact the API. Let's explore the concept of API revisions. While closely related to API versions, API revisions and versions are distinct, particularly within API management platforms like APG. API revisions refer to the various iterations or updates of an API proxy. Each time you modify the API proxy, a new revision is created. This allows you to manage and roll back changes within a specific API deployment, making it easier to track the history of updates and revert to a previous state if an issue arises. API revisions focus on granular API proxy changes and do not require API consumers to alter their usage patterns. In contrast, API versions signify significant changes to the API's contract or functionality and may require the API consuming application to implement the change. Revisions serve primarily for internal tracking and deployment management, while versions communicate essential changes to API consumers, helping manage compatibility over time. Each time a developer commits a change, a new revision is created. To summarize, API versioning is crucial for managing changes and ensuring your API evolves without disrupting existing clients. Whether you choose URI versioning, query parameters, or headers, the key is consistency and keeping your documentation current. API revisions, on the other hand, refer to the different versions or updates of an API proxy or gateway configuration. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates. Please give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful and let me know what you think or if you have any questions in the comments. Look out for our next video in which we will explore the Open API specification.